Hello and welcome to episode 144 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing exploration of just what drives people to get so hooked on this game. Rod Murray with you to introduce a fascinating interview John Huggan has done in the lead up to this week's AIG Women's Open. This is the 49th staging of the event, which is now a major, but that wasn't the case when Jenny Lee Smith won the first tournament back in 1976. Jenny sat down for a lengthy chat about life, golf, the universe and everything. And John Huggan is with me now to give a bit of a pre-interview insight. Huggy, coming up to the Women's British Open, you've spoken with the first ever winner of the Women's British Open, who, to my eternal shame, I could never have named before I listened to this episode, and even worse, I doubt I could have guessed what year it took place. Continue my embarrassment by telling us a little bit about Jenny Lee Smith, or Jenny Lucas as she's now known.
Yeah, well, I'd heard of her. She was a very good player in in European women's era, sort of early 80s. She won the Order of Merit twice in a row, I think, in the early 80s after she turned professional. But she won the Women's British Open as an amateur in 1976, the only player in the field who broke 300. It was a mixture of amateurs and professionals, and so obviously she didn't get any money for winning. The prize money, total prize money, was £500. £210 went to the winner, or didn't go to the winner in this case. It went to Vivian Saunders, who finished tied for fourth. The irony of that being that Vivian Saunders and another professional had actually put up some of the money for the prize fund. So she was basically paying herself.
Return on investment, I think they call that, Huggy.
Yeah, things were that basic. And there was no leaderboards or anything. Jenny touches on that. And her caddy told her on the 72nd hole that she thought she needed a birdie to win by one. And she did make the birdie, but she actually won by two. But she had no clue, at the time, what was going on. So it was all pretty basic 49 years ago. And but it's come a long way, the Women's British Open.
It has, and thankfully so. That's such an unthinkable scenario to me as having grown up watching golf on TV, the notion that a player could come to the 72nd hole and not know where they stand. It's an unthinkable situation. That would be a game changer. If none of us knew where anybody stood, if we all just watched the golfers who won, we'd be like, I've got no idea. Quite.
Well, do you play safe? Do you go for it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, we know about Snead, don't we? And what happened to him with making that, I think it was 8 up the par 5. She described, Huggy, touching on what you've just said, as madness, the notion of turning professional at the time. She turned professional the year after. Give people just a little taste of what professional women's golf in Europe looked like at the time.
Well, I think she was one of about 30 that turned pro the same day from the amateur game, and with the promise of very little. I mean, it was a huge leap into the unknown for those women, and good on them for doing it. And they built something that is, I'm not going to kid you, it's not fantastic now, the Ladies European Tour, but it's there, and it gives them somewhere to play, and it gives them a stepping stone if they're good enough to the LPGA Tour. And so what they have now is so much better than what there was. Basically nothing. I mean, they were touring about, sharing rooms, and in car, all the stuff that you hear about the bottom level of professional golf was true times 10 probably for those women. So she's one of that deserves a lot of credit for that.
A genuine pioneer. Anybody who's not familiar with the story of the beginnings of the LPGA, it's a real education and a lesson in determination, and players who have really gone out of their way to further the game. Huggy, one of the most interesting things about this story is it's not just a golf story, is it? Something really quite remarkable happened to Jenny Lee Smith, or Jenny Lucas as she's now known, back in 2012. Tell us about that.
Well, there's 3 real steps to this story. I mean, it's not, as you say, it's not a golf story, and I just sat back for basically the second half of this podcast and just let her tell the story. Jenny and her sister they're twins, obviously born at the same time. They were separated basically immediately and adopted 2 different directions. Jenny didn't know she was adopted till she was in her mid-teens. She didn't know she had a sister until she investigated it. At first, they thought they were half-sisters with different fathers. They were tested, the DNA tested, and discovered that they were full sisters at first. Then they were tested again, and discovered that they were twins. And her twin sister, Helen, was almost 2 years older than she thought she was at a stroke, which must have been fun at the time.
Good Lord.
But yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful story. And Jenny had got the best of the deal. I mean, she had two doting parents that helped her with her golf and all the rest of it, were parents as they should be. Helen, on the other hand, I mean, there's a book, the My Secret Sister, the book is called, and I haven't read all of it. I won't tell you that, but I've read enough of it to know that Helen had a terrible time of it. I mean, it was horrifying, some of the stuff that went on and the way she was treated as a child. They're happy enough now that they live at opposite ends of the country in England, but I'm sure they still see each other often. And it's a story with every emotion you can think of, from, you're horrified one minute and your heart is glad to know what the end result is. And it's, again, as I say, nothing to do with golf, but it's a fantastic story.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. As unthinkable as not knowing where everybody stood when the final group stands on the 18th of a tournament, genuinely unthinkable would be to discover late in life that you had a sibling. I can't imagine if someone came to me now and said, by the way, you've got a brother or a sister and they live in Melbourne, it would take me a couple of days to convince me to start with. So that's I wonder what that does to shape a personality as well, Huggy.
Well, you're right. But the other thing was, I didn't mention, was that they grew up just a few miles apart.
Oh, good Lord.
And didn't know of each other.
Are they they're not identical twins?
No, they're not identical.
Right.
No, they're different. But they, I mean, they've got so many, as Jenny said, they've so many characteristics the same, the usual. They get the same aches and pains now. They're in their 70s and all the rest of it. And so ultimately, it's a happy story, but it's there's some pretty tough stuff to read on the way there.
Like all good stories, Huggy, it takes us on a journey. And like all the best stories, there's actually a real happy ending, which we could all do within the world at the moment if I could get just a tiny bit political. But great to have you along to introduce it, Huggy. And this is one, I've listened to half of this one. I've got to admit to the listeners, I've listened to half, and I'm about to embark on the bit where Jenny finds out about her sister. So thank you for whetting my appetite, and hopefully the listeners for what's a terrific chat.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is one of the great ladies of European golf, Jenny Lee Smith, as was Jennifer Lucas these days, but the first ever winner of the Ladies British Open in 1976. Jenny, what was and is the thing about golf for you?
The thing about golf was instigated in my life by my dad. He cut clubs down for me when I was about 3 years old. And although at that point I really wasn't playing, I was just hitting a golf ball. But it became a weekend thing. We had a bungalow up the coast in Northumberland, and it was right on the edge of a golf course. And I was fortunate enough to go out with my dad and play. And it just became a part of our lives. And I just continued and fortunately earned money from it latterly. And it just was a life of amateur golf, which began when I sort of first played for the county at 16, 17, and then county champion, and then played for England and played for Great Britain, and then won the British Open and turned pro.
You make it sound easy.
Yeah. But it's just been a part of me, It's I've lived, slept, and eaten golf all my life, basically.
There's a common theme when I ask that question is that parents, obviously, they come up quite often. Tell me about your dad and what sort of times you had with him as a kid. Were you caddying at first, or how did that go?
Yes, I used to go out with him. The little golf course where we played is up the coast, and it was right on the edge of the beach, and our bungalow was right about 50 yards off the fourth green. So at night time, we had a little patch of grass in front of the bungalow, which my granddad had cut and kept it nice and short and tidy. And it was a little plateau green, and it was a heck of a shot to to hit to actually stay on the green. You know, it was a much longer hole, much longer green from the tee aspect, but from our bungalow. And I used to go out with my dad in the evenings, and after the men's medal, we'd go out and hunt for golf balls because we didn't have a lot of money. So we'd go out and hunt for the golf balls that were lost during the men's medal. And he and I, you know, he taught me to swim in the cold North Sea. And it was just, you know, father and daughter. He was a great guy. Unfortunately, I lost him when I was only 12. He had a very short illness and passed away very quickly.
How quickly did it become obvious that there was some talent there with you in the golf?
Well, I had my first golf lesson from Eddie Fernie. Eddie Fernie was Scottish, and I believe one of his brothers actually won the British Open, the men's British Open. There were 5 brothers, and they were all pros.
Right. Okay.
And I had my first golf lesson from him, I think, when I was 13, and it was 10 and sixpence in old money, and he
55p for those who don't know.
Yes, he wanted me to come the following week, and my mother we didn't have a lot of money, and he said it will give me far more pleasure to turn Jennifer into a champion than it is to take money from you. So he never charged for another lesson, and he was a great teacher.
Wow. Yeah.
And my mother used to take him, bake him a cake, or take him a half a dozen eggs or something, you know, just in replacement for the cost of the lesson. But he was great, and I had a golf lesson from him every Saturday. So it was. So
how did you progress? I mean, how quickly did it become clear that this was something that you were really good at?
Well, later on, I was fortunate that when I left school, I didn't do very well at school because I was a competitive swimmer, and I took up a lot of time swimming as well. And when I had done my GCEs as they were then, didn't do very well. And there was an advert in the local paper that John Jacobs was opening a golf range in Gosford, in just beside the racecourse in Newcastle. And my mother said, "Why don't you apply for a job?" So I think my handicap was 28 then. And John Jacobs used to come up sort of 4 days every month. And I was always detailed, come on, he'd say, out on the range, bring a bucket of balls.
Yeah.
And I hit about 20 balls, and he said, "One day you'll play for England." And I was just sort of flabbergasted. I thought, you know, crazy, this guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then after that was 1969, I think. Oh, no, 60. It was the year that England won the World Cup. So it was 66, wasn't it?
England won the World Cup? I've never heard that before. I mean, it's the first time I've ever heard about 1966.
No.
I wasn't watching like many people in Scotland, but there you go.
No,
anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting. Sorry.
So after about this, he said that one day I'll play for England, and I was fortunate because every time he came up, and it was sort of 3-4 days every month, and every month he would take me out on the golf range and he would put me through, you know, the reels and everything, and the setup, and you know, he always believed that the setup was the most important thing, and the right hands, the right position of the ball, and the basics, really. And he was just a great teacher, and he didn't even have to look at you swinging. He knew exactly what I was doing just from the flight of the ball.
Yeah,
and he was just a marvelous guy, and you know, at that point he was teaching the Spanish pros, he was teaching the King of Spain, and you know, then he became Ryder Cup captain. I can't remember what year that was, but he was a great guy. And
79 and 81 he was Ryder Cup captain.
Yeah. But he was fantastic, and he actually, I continued to have lessons after I left the golf range in 1973. First time I played for England. And then after I'd won the British Open, he wrote me such a lovely letter saying that he said, I remember the first time you hit golf balls and me telling you that one day you play for England, and here it is, you've won the British Open. And, you know, it was a fabulous, lovely letter to have.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it briefly there, but you ticked all the boxes on the way up kind of thing on the way to turning pro. You played in a couple of Curtis Cups, I know, in the early mid 70s. I was always did you play in the one at Western Gales?
No.
In 74,
no, I played at I played 74, which was in San Francisco.
Right.
No, 74 and 76.
Right, I've got the years wrong as well.
Roy Lytham.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It always intrigued me back then. I mean, there was also, even later in the 80s, they played the Curtis Cup at all-male golf clubs. Muirfield, Western Gales was one, and St. Ross and George's. I mean, that perplexed me looking back now. But did that even cross your mind at the time that you know, there was this, you know, kind of sexism basically going on in the background?
I know it did cross my mind because I was, you know, part of a very male sport, really.
Yeah,
and, a lot of the clubs that we played at they didn't even have lady members, and if they did have ladies playing, they weren't even members; they were associate members, you know, because of their husband's membership or something like that. So it was a very, very male. You know, it has changed a lot since then. I remember
it's gotten better, no doubt. Yes.
Yeah, I remember going to Muirfield with a pro who helped me as well, Peter Ballingall, who was a Scottish guy. You may have heard of him, and he took me up to Muirfield, and there was a sign on the door of the clubhouse: "No dogs or women allowed in this clubhouse."
yeah. I mean, I know. There's no defense for this nonsense, but yeah, the reason I ask that is because when you did turn pro, I mean, it was an incredibly brave move at the time. I mean, there wasn't professional golf for women. It wasn't offering a lot, certainly not outside America. And I just wondered how what was part of your decision-making process at that time, because it was a brave thing to do. It would have been easy, I would imagine, to keep going, playing at the top level of amateur golf. You'd get in teams, they'd look after, you know, you'd get the expenses to play for England and all the rest of it. They'd look after you. It's when it comes down to money, though, I mean, there wasn't a lot of money flying around for women outside the LPGA. Even the LPGA would be great back then, but certainly the European tour that you kind of were part of the evolution of, there wasn't a lot of money flying around. So I always think it was a very brave thing to do. Run me through your thought process.
Brave or mad, maybe. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that first year of the European Tour, 1979, I think we were playing in total 30 girls for, I think it was, my first winner's check was £250, which didn't even pay for accommodation for a week, you know. But I was, after I'd won the British Open, I was approached by a chap called Johnny Jones, who was a music guy, really, and he offered to, there were three of us, Lynn Harold, Christine Langford and myself, and he offered to fund us going to the qualifying school in the States. And I got my card, and they didn't get theirs, so I was out there on my own, basically. But had it not been for him, I don't think I could have actually got out there and competed in the qualifying school. You know, he was a driving force in that respect. So I have a big thanks for him for getting me at least on the first level.
So what did a women's European Tour event look like back then?
I promised the rest of the girls, I think there were 30 girls who all turned pro more or less on the same time. And back then, if you went to the qualifying school and didn't get your card, you'd become a pro. Now the girls, if they go and they don't get their cards, they can still play in amateur events. The rules are just totally changed. So we were committed then to being pros, and it was just 30 girls playing, and I think there were only that first year. I think there were 12 events, and the winner £250. That was it. And they were
was anybody watching? Was there anybody watching?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Sometimes we'd turn up at a golf club, and even the members didn't even know we were playing a tournament that week. It was quite funny, quite amusing. And we'd get to an event, and sometimes they didn't even have a practice ground that we could go on. So it was. We played at some very strange places.
I can imagine. What did you ever have any second thoughts, having done it?
Quite often, I sort of doubted myself, a little bit, quite often, and doubted the fact that, I think we had one tournament in the south of France, and there was a mix-up with the sponsors' money, and it hadn't been put in the bank, and we got there, not knowing whether we'd be even playing for any funds that week. It was It was quite, in and out. But that was the first year, and we conquered that. And it has been written that we were trailblazers, in women's golf, and we probably were. But we had great fun. The 30 of us, we travelled together, we roomed together, practiced together, went to restaurants together, and it was I had a massive fun. It was really, it was very enjoyable, and I'm really proud to think that I was there at the very beginning, and we got that tour started as to what it is now, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's come a long way. I mean, there's a long way to go, I think. I mean, how do you look at women's professional golf these days? I mean, it has come a long way. It doesn't. I always think they spend too much time comparing with the men. It's two different things, and they shouldn't compare with the men in any way, because it's just a different game. It's certainly come an awful long way from the time that you were playing, sort of early 80s. I think you were in the States.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And how do you look at it now? I mean, there's a lot more money, certainly, that's for sure.
Oh, it's hugely different now as to what it was then. So many of the Asian girls, and the standard of golf is incredible. As to what it was in the very beginning. When I first turned pro, and I always say that it was a huge step from amateur level in Britain to professional level in the United States on the tour out there. But now, so many of our young players are either at a college in America, play collegiate golf to a very, very high standard. And even sort of the top amateur golfers in Great Britain going out to the LPGA now is not such a big gap. And the level and the standard is fabulous. They're playing some fantastic golf.
They are. I mean, I went to I was at the Curtis Cup last year at Sunningdale, and I think it was my favourite event to cover last year. It was just brilliant. The weather was great. The course is wonderful, as you know, and the standard of play is really. I mean, that Lottie Wood was the best player in the GB&I team. I mean, she was playing pro golf. Pro standard golf. She could make it on the tour with the golf she's playing now, and I've no doubt she'll get better still. It's certainly come a long way. I mean, the Curtis Cup, I'm assuming it looked a bit different from, I don't know if you were there, but it was on television, that Curtis Cup compared with the ones you played in. Could you compare the two just for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, again, the standard is just incredible. And I think that the girls playing now on that Curtis Cup are far, far superior as to what we were then. Yeah, definitely. And as I say, so many of the girls are on, scholarships in the States that they have the option and the ability to play in fantastic courses and against such other great players. And it's got to raise the standard.
Yeah. How was it like? What was it like for you? I mean, you mentioned the States. Yeah, I know you won the Order of Merit in Europe a couple of times, early 80s. You played on a fair bit on the LPGA tour. Again, the same kind of question. What was that like now, or compared with now? What was it like back then for you? What was your experience really?
It was tough. I mean, I sort of qualified out of the same school as Nancy Lopez and Betsy King, and they won so many tournaments between them. And I played with Nancy in the same Curtis Cup side at Royal Lytham. And she's a fantastic golfer. And made her mark, although she didn't get her card the first time around, she got it the second. And my top finish that I had in America on the LPGA was ninth, and that was at Hershey, Pennsylvania. And actually, Nancy was 11th, so that was my claim to fame.
But you beat Nancy Lopez. Well done.
Yes. Yeah. But it was great, and it was amazing. All the traveling. It sounds very glamorous, John, but the traveling and everything gets to you after a while. It's sort of Monday is getting your clothes washed for the next event, and traveling on to the next tournament, and practice day Tuesday, pro-am day Wednesday, and people say, where were you last week? And sometimes I just couldn't even remember where I'd been the previous week. It's just you're going on to the next event. Not so much as the top guys now going around in private jets and things like that. It's a little bit different.
Just a little bit, yeah. But,
just a tad.
Yeah, you've given us a wee flavour of what life was like on the tour. Then, I mean, but give us a bit more. I mean, I'm interested in just how basic it was, for want of a better word, for the players back then. And certainly, I mean, you weren't winning tournaments, so I mean, imagine it was, you were watching the pennies and the costs and all the rest of it. I mean, it's an expensive business to play the tour. People forget that. Just go into it a bit more deeply if you can.
Well, I mentioned just before that I would always be thankful to Johnny Jones who got me out, and I think as a sponsor and a so-called manager. That he believed that I was going to go out and maybe win fortunes, which didn't exactly happen. So after about 6 or 7 events and not having won a check, I tried to enter the next event and wrote out a check, and the check bounced. And Johnny Jones just went into cloud whatever, just disappeared off the scene. And it was then that I had to turn to my mum in Newcastle to send me out some money into this account so I could survive, basically. But it was tough. I mean, when you're playing in tournaments, you had the option of either hospitality, and you'd be housed with some of the members, or staying in hotels. So there were events that everybody always said, oh, yeah, the hospitality here is marvellous. It's a lovely country club. You have put your name down for housing. So we'd be taken and met by the members who would take us, and we'd stayed in their homes. And some places were absolutely fabulous. And I stayed friends with a lot of the families that I stayed with. Pat and Mike Eckstein I met in Cincinnati, and they became sort of like an American mum and dad to me, and invited me if I had a week off to come and stay with them, and they took me out and played golf, and it became amazing friends. And I had another couple in San Diego who I went back and stayed with, and they were absolutely fabulous, So
it sounds like it could be a lonely business.
Oh,
especially for a Brits back then. There wouldn't be many British players, or even Europeans.
No, I think for that first year, I think I was the only British player on tour. Mickey Walker, I think, had her card, but she wasn't. Right. She wasn't out there that year. But no, I think I was the only one. So it was a little bit lonely. But I made some good friendships, and still to this day, Sylvia Fadon and she was from Wisconsin, and she and I played in the qualifying school together in the last two rounds. And we're still our friends, and we email each other. And she left the tour and she became a coach for Baylor University in Texas.
Right.
And when I lived in Florida with my husband and family, she brought a team to Florida every summer to play in a collegiate event, and they always came and visited. And she came over actually and played on the European tour for a while as well. And she and I have just stayed friends, and it's a sort of lifelong friendship, really, through golf, which is great.
Yeah. How do you look back on those days? I mean, it sounds like there was a lot of struggles. I mean, if you give Nancy Lopez 10 out of 10, where would you sit on that scale as a player?
10 out of 10. I'd probably be maybe 2 or 3, I would think.
Well, you're probably being a bit modest, but yeah, I mean, I think you were better than that. I was looking at your record, but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been easy. I mean, because there wasn't a lot of money even for finishing high up in events back then.
No, I think for that 9th finish, I think I won about 3,500 or something like that. Which wasn't a great deal when you consider all the traveling. I mean, sometimes you were going from Florida to California to Hawaii, paid for by yourself if you didn't have a sponsor. But I was fortunate that Ping sponsored me with golf clubs, and they got me back to Phoenix on several occasions if I had a week off, and they would sort out my equipment. And Carsten Solheim and Louise took me under their wing, and they were absolutely brilliant. And I think it's probably quite similar now, but even on the European tour, that Carsten Solheim put up what they called a Ping pot, and he puts a certain amount of money in the pot, and every event you would fill in a card and send it in, whether you played the driver or played the putter or and fill in this card for every event, whether you made the cut, how many rounds you played. And then at the end of the year, all the cards were taken, divided into points. Every point had a value, and then you got a Ping check at the end of the year, which I don't think that I could have survived without those checks from Ping.
What was Solheim like? I mean, he was obviously a genius. But
he was.
I all the time I've covered golf, I'm not that familiar with his personality. I think quirky is the best description I've heard of him.
Yeah.
But people who are
like the
that clever, they're often like that. Right, okay.
Absent-minded professor,
Yeah.
I can remember we were walking through Southport and Ainsdale through the car park. And it was at the time, I don't know whether you remember, all the things about the grooves on Ping clubs, and they were...
Yeah.
And he was trying to explain to me the theory behind this the grooves and everything. And he stopped, and it was a very hot, sunny day, and the dust in the cars. And he was trying to do a little diagram in the dust on this car, trying to explain what the groove and how it affected the golf ball and how it, And I just looked at him, and I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. I mean, I really didn't. I mean, it was just, it was quite really sort of the theory and everything behind it. But he was a great character. I really liked him. And I remember that we went up, my husband and I, we went up to Gainsborough when they opened the golf course there, and they had the Red Arrows. All the golfers from the Red Arrow team were all there, and they all had they'd given them golf bags, and they had even the format of the Red Arrows embroidered on the golf bag, and that particular player where he flew in the format.
Right.
And my husband, we went out and we played a practice round. My husband played with Carsten, and there was a pro there from Texas was in the 4-ball, and he said to me, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm just picking up a few conkers for my children." And he said, "What are conkers?" And I said, "Well, they host chestnuts, and you have to take the prickly bit outside, and you get the middle bit, and then you put it on a string." Oh, okay. And then later on that same hole, it was his shot. And this Texas pro, "Come on, Carsten, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm conquering. Leave me alone. I'm conquering."
Right.
He was going out filling his golf bag up with those chestnuts.
I don't think he would ever lose. He was Norwegian. I mean, I think he still had the accent. Yeah. Never lost that.
He was Norwegian, and he actually, he was obviously an engineer of some description, and he had a very, very bad accident. He was up on a scaffolding on the side of a ship, and the scaffolding gave way, and he fell to the ground. And there was a pool of water, which it just saved his life, because if he'd landed on the concrete, he'd probably been killed. But
golf would have been a very different place without him.
Yeah. And my husband made a joke with him. He said, "Your brother's doing very well, Carsten." And Carsten said, "What do you mean, Sam?" And he said, "Your brother, Colonel Saunders," because he did look a bit like...
He did. He had the wee beard, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't laugh at all at that. He didn't see the funny side of that.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I want to track back a little bit and talk about your ladies' British Open win. Very different again from today. We're talking almost half a century ago now, 49 years. Yeah. Fulford Golf Club. Take me back there. Paint a picture of what it was like. I mean, were there big crowds? Small crowds? Was there any atmosphere?
There was quite a lot of atmosphere. I suppose there were quite a few people watching, but nothing as to what it is now and how the ladies British is now. But I suppose maybe a couple of hundred people, maybe, just watching. And of course, we didn't have the scoreboards as they did then, so nobody knew what was going on with the other players. I mean, it was. I actually had a very bad chest infection leading up to that, and I was on the verge of just withdrawing because I'd been so poorly and been on antibiotics. And anyway, I felt a little bit better, and my mother said, "Oh, just go get there." You said, even if you don't, it was only sort of at York, and from Newcastle, it was only like 100 miles or whatever. So it wasn't too long a travel. And coming up to the last round, I think I was playing, I can't remember who I was even playing with on that last round. I know Mary McKenna, she was up there, the Irish girl. And I think I was playing with Julia Greenhalgh in the last day. And I came to the 18th thinking that I had a lady pulling my trolley, one of the members. And she sort of muttered that she thought I needed to have a birdie. It was a par 5 to make birdie to win. And I did make birdie, but then won by 2. So I didn't have to make that birdie, but I knocked it. It was a shortish par 5, and I knocked it just short of the green, chipped on and sank the putt for a 4. And yes, hey ho, British Open champion, which was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, well, it looks great on the CV. I mean, you didn't get any money, obviously, as an amateur. What did you get? No. What was your prize? 2
candlesticks.
Right. Okay.
which on a plinth, which I held for a year.
Right. Yeah. And
2 candlesticks.
You've nothing tangible that you.
No, no money. No. I got a pewter plate, which I still have.
Right.
Okay. Which I was allowed to keep. And that was the thing.
It's like, again, it's way different from the big check that whoever wins at Porthcawl this year will get. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I don't even know what the winner's check is, but it's quite a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a lot now. Yeah, they've got a great sponsor, and the R&E are involved, as you know. So it's come a long way, as they say. Any regrets on the money side of things, that you look now at the money that they're making?
Yeah, that's one question that people always ask.
God.
Yeah. No, I have to say no. It would be nice to be out there playing for a lot of money now, but I had my day. I really enjoyed it. It was different then. I'm proud to be a founder member of the European Tour, and I really enjoyed that time, and I can't say that I've got any regrets. It's just it was really enjoyable. I don't even play anymore because I've got this wonky finger that I can't really grip a club, so have no control over that finger. It's an arthritic joint which went a bit wrong in the surgery. So, but it was, it was great fun, John. And other things take priority. And I've got sort of 7 grandchildren and dogs that get me up out of bed in the morning, get me out and get me pacing and walking. And as I'm 76 now, so it's.
I wasn't going to ask. It's never good to ask a woman how old she is.
I was at my GP on Friday because I'm all aches and pains, and he looked at me. He said, "Jenny," he said, "you're 76, but my goodness, you're looking good."
Oh, well, that's always good to hear. It's always good to hear.
Yeah.
I want to move on now, as there really should be 2 parts to this podcast, and I've flicked. I mean, I won't tell you I've read all your book, but I've read enough of it to say what a remarkable story you and your sister are. You didn't know you had a sister for long. You didn't know you were adopted. You didn't know you had a sister. You didn't know you were full sisters. You didn't know you were twins at various stages of your lives. It's a remarkable tale, which I would recommend anybody buying. My Secret Sister is the name of the book. I really just need you to tell the story as much as you can. I'm sure it's quite emotional, even after all this time to talk about it. But I think I can ask enough questions here. But you can. The best way to tell the story is in your own words. I'm just going to sit back and let you tell it if you can.
Okay. Well, I didn't appreciate I was adopted and was never told by my father or mother, and found out after my dad had died when I was 12. I was 14 and I was with some cousins who were having an argument. And I tried to stand up for one of the sisters, and the elder one turned to me and she said, "You're not even part of this family." She said, that woman downstairs is not even your mother. And that's how I found out I was adopted. So approaching my mother on the way home after that, and of course she then told me, agreed that yes, I was adopted. But I was chosen, and they'd always told me this story about going up to a castle on the hill, and the cots were all in this room in the castle, and the blue cots were on one side, and the pink cots were on the other side, and they went to the pink cots, and that's the story of, and being a very naive child, I honestly thought that that's how I was chosen. And of course, after that, I asked for details about where I came from, who were my parents. And my mother really didn't want ever to speak about it. She just used to be very quiet and didn't know. And she kept saying, "I don't know anything about it." And, in those days, adoption really wasn't sort of spoken about. I was born in 1948, and it just wasn't spoken. It was just sort of pushed under the carpet. It's not something that you say.
Yeah.
So I sort of lived, and occasionally it brought up. It was brought up at a family wedding. My an aunt said to me, I think she'd had too many sherries, and she said, that she had breastfed me as well as her daughter because we were of a similar age. And obviously my adoptive mother couldn't because, she hadn't given birth to me, so had no milk.
Right.
And occasionally things came up like that were brought up. But again, if I asked my mother anything, she just wouldn't say anything. But then going on from that, in 1975, the government brought out a law that any adoptive child could now apply for your birth certificate, even though it was then a closed adoption.
Right.
You have closed adoptions and open adoptions. So then my mother was still alive, and I always said that I didn't want to hurt her in any way, shape, or form. And eventually, my interest got the better of me, and I applied for my birth certificate to Somerset House. And then you had to go through a period of just with a social worker to make sure that you were mentally fit enough to take on the information or even. I
mean, it's a lot. It's a lot at that age, isn't it? My goodness,
it is.
You must have had a lot of conflicting emotions going through your body at that point. Yeah.
So I went through all the trauma with this social worker, and eventually she said, "Yeah, she said, I think you're okay because I have to prepare you. You may have a double rejection. You know, your parents, if they're there, they might not want to meet you." And so on the birth certificate was the address of my mother when she'd had me. Her name was Mercia Bradshaw was her name, and she lived about 2 miles away from where I lived at that point.
Amazing.
And I realised that I could sort of be walking past her in the street, not knowing that she was my mother. So I went round knocking on doors the following day on the address, and this lady came to the door and said. She said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Jennifer," because on the birth certificate I was named Jennifer by my birth mother, and my parents had kept that name.
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm Jennifer." And so she took me in and she hugged me and kissed me. She said, "It's my sister. Is your mother?" She said she doesn't live here. She lives in North Shields, which was just on the coast in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And she said. I'll ring her. I'm going to ring her. So she rang, and I could only hear one side of the conversation. And she came off the phone and she said, "I'm really, really sorry. She doesn't want to see you. She doesn't want to talk to you." She said, "Too much water's gone under the bridge." And basically that was it. And had to get in my car and after sort of sitting there having a cup of tea with her. And I said, at that point, I said, "But who was my father then?" And she said, her honest words, she said, "He was a right bad bugger and he's 6 foot under." And she said, "You shouldn't know who he is." Yeah. And at that point, obviously, I just thought that he died. And of course he hadn't. He was still very much alive at that point. But so she, stopped me finding out who he was and stopped me really meeting him and seeing him, which... I still am a bit grieved at, because I could have met my father. Yeah. And anyway, went home and thought about it and had a few tears and, just...
I was going to say, you must have had a right good cry after that. I mean, I think anybody...
Oh, I did.
Man, yeah.
I honestly don't know how I got home, John, that afternoon, I can remember driving home and I can't remember how I got home. It was quite traumatic, and it's just one of these things that you've just got to pick yourself up and get on with life,
Was golf a bit of a refuge for you in the midst of all this?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, it was. You could go down to the practice range and get a bucket of balls and give them stick, take it out in the golf balls,
Yeah.
So that was a good thing. But life went on, and my golf career went on, and then at some point, when I finished on playing on the tour, I had back surgery, which really stopped me playing. I had serious back surgery, which I was lucky not to be paralysed, to be honest. And I was just fortunate to have a really good surgeon, David Stainsby, who was also the surgeon to Newcastle United, the football club, and obviously a great sports guy who did the surgery. And I only went in for a test to see what was going on, because I'd slipped on some ice and landed on my tail end and really couldn't walk more than 20 yards. After that, it was really chronic. And he turned to me and he said, "I can't even let you out of the hospital." He said, it's very serious. So you're first on my list tomorrow morning for surgery.
Wow.
And I was just really fortunate that I had this surgery and I was okay and was, back walking. And I decided at that point it was too much of a strain to go back on the tour. So I went back to the golf range that I'd recently been with John Jacobs that I'd worked at, and I ended up teaching at that same golf range. After that, and then I just decided in the wintertime I needed to go somewhere where I could maybe have some winter sunshine. And there was an advert in the paper for somebody, a local guy who was selling properties out in Tenerife, Gulf del Sur. So I went out there and met Robert, a Dutch guy who was the owner of Gulf del Sur, and he wanted me to go and maybe teach out there in the wintertime and to meet clients who were coming out. And it was there that I met my husband. He was selling properties at the same place and ended up marrying this guy. So then moved from Newcastle to Kent, where I
love
am
that
now.
line. I just married this guy. I love that line.
Yeah, we met out there, and it was sort of a whirlwind romance. And it was the chap that I'd met, who was the Robert and his brother ran Gulf del Sur, and then ended up coming back and met my husband Sam, and sort of a year and a half after that we were married, and then had my daughter Katie, and when I was age 40, and Ben when I was almost 43, and
Wow.
then we adopted. My husband set up a charity, and he was going out to Romania, and we were out on this occasion, both of us, looking at projects that he was going to do. He refurbished a children's hospital and in the infectious disease hospital. He had a company which did painting and spraying, commercial work, really, not domestic work, and they did all the painting and the Olympic Village, when it was in London,
right?
And ended up in Romania, and the doctor came out this one day and he said, "Sam," he said, "you've got children?" And we said yes. And he said, this little chap's just been abandoned. He was 6 days old at that point. And he came out and he was just wrapped up in a bit of grey rag. It was quite dire in Romania in those days.
Yeah.
And very, very sad. And as a parent of, I think Katie was 3 at that point, and maybe Ben was about 1.5. And when I saw this little chap, it was just heartbreaking, and I started to cry, and he just, I felt so upset, and it turned out that the mum had been sent away by the family to have for the last 3 months of her pregnancy, and her parents had told her that if you come home with the baby, we will kill you and the baby. And
goodness.
That was very, very harsh. So anyway, we managed to get this little chap home sort of 10 weeks later, and he's now 32, strapping lad, has his own garden maintenance business. But it was then sort of looking at my children and looking at my daughter when I first had her, that I thought, this is the only blood relative I have.
Yeah.
And it was then that instigated my search for my birth family. And it was then that it really, really got going.
Yeah.
And
well, keep going. This is fascinating. I'm enjoying. This is the most fun I've ever had on a podcast, if you can put it that way.
So I started to search and hit a brick wall every avenue that I looked down. And I started with the Samaritans who helped many adopted people with searches, and it's just hit every brick wall. And at my search, I sort of gave up and then started again and gave up and started, and then we decided to go out and live in Florida for it was originally for a couple of years, and we stayed 8. And it was when we were out in Florida that my cousin Wendy, who lived in Whitley Bay, wrote to me, and she said, "I found out where your mother lives." And she sent me an address, and I wrote her a letter, really nice letter, just saying who I was, my name, whatever. And there was no reply. And then I wrote again and just said I didn't want anything. I just felt that I really would like to, know if she was all right, that I'm fine. And I got a very sort of cursed letter saying, please don't pester an old lady. I'm not in very good health, so please just leave me alone. So that again was a bit of a.
This is heavy stuff, Ginny. My goodness, jeez.
Yeah. And the following summer, we were coming back from Florida. My daughter was going to be a bridesmaid at my cousin Wendy's daughter's wedding.
Yeah,
Louise's wedding. And when we came home, I said to my husband, I said, look, I'm going to go and knock on her door. I know where she lives. This is it. She's my mother. She's these kids' grandparents, and I want them to see her. So anyway, we made a plan. My husband went to the door. I'm sort of crouching behind him. The kids are crouching behind me. He knocked on the door, and she came to the door, and she sort of, a bit of a perplexed look on her face. And Sam said to her, Mercia, it's been a long time, hasn't it? And she said, yes, it has. But who are you? And he sort of stepped aside and he said, well, I think this young lady here. This is your daughter, Jennifer. And she hugged me and kissed me and, many tears. I mean, it was such an emotional roller coaster of an afternoon. But in the midst of all that, there were a pair of jeans hanging over the radiator at the side. And she said to me, my daughter Helen could walk through the door any minute and she doesn't know anything about you. So please don't say who you are. And I said, okay. And I agreed to say that. And I sort out this picture here.
Yes.
That afternoon.
Yeah.
With my children.
Yeah. This won't work too well on an oral podcast, but yeah, it's a beautiful picture. I can confirm it's beautiful. Yes.
of the one time that I met my birth mother. And we sat there and she said, you got to forgive me, kept apologizing. It was at the end of the war. Things were easy. And Helen didn't walk through the door.
That was what I was going to ask. Sorry to interrupt, but what were the circumstances over her giving you up for adoption?
She just said that she couldn't, I didn't have the money. It was at the end of the war. Her husband had deserted her. Which kind of wasn't exactly true. He was taken a prisoner of war in Germany, and he came back after the war ended, but then told her that he was going back because he'd met a German lady out there, and he wanted to be with her and not with Mercia. But she was very. Very sad about the whole thing and just very apologetic. And, You know, times were hard, and they were hard at the end of the war. I can remember when I was a child, still had, food rations, and it was 1 egg a week or something. And we were lucky that my uncle was a butcher, and I think he always sidled a bit of extra meat to my mother. But it was a.
I was just sorry. What was it like when your sister? You knew she was your sister when she came in. She didn't know who you were, but what was that like for you at that moment?
Well, she didn't come in that afternoon.
Oh, right. Okay.
She didn't come through the door, and that was the thing. But what I got from that meeting was a name into my brain that I've got a sister who's called Helen. Mm-hmm. And we flew back to Florida after that wedding, and we returned to Florida and to life there. And it was then that I started to make inquiries as to what Helen, who is Helen, what's her name? I didn't know what her name was. I didn't married name, and I knew that she had lived abroad. I knew that she had lived in Australia. She lived in Melbourne for 2 years. She lived in South Africa. She lived in, at that time, unknown to me, she was actually living in Texas when I was living in Florida. And it quite easily could have met each other on that side of the Atlantic rather than here. So we came back to move back to Kent in 2005. And my only method of finding Helen was to, I put a message on, and I don't think it longer exists anymore, Genes Reunite. And I put a message on there, putting my mother's name, birth date, and Helen, believed that I have a sister called Helen. And the following day, I got an email address from a lady. She said, "I'm your cousin." She said to me that your sister, Helen, lives in Texas. And after much digging and pleading, she gave me Helen's email address. She said, "You've also got a sister, Anne, and you've got another sister, and cousins and another sister. But they think that they're cousins." She said, "I know that they're sisters, and I know that you were a sister too." And so I sat for about, 2, 3, 4 days and wrote this email. How do you write an email and tell this person, "I think that I'm your sister"? And of course, I had photos of that day with Mercia, and then I knew various events, so I put this all in the email. And she, after about a day, she wrote back, and she just couldn't believe it. And we at that point we thought we were half sisters, because she thought that her birthday was the 1st of April 1950. And I knew that I was born from my birth certificate the 2nd of December 1948.
I can see what's coming here. She's going to get a bit of a shock. She's 2 years older than she thought she was.
she found, So it was really weird, because when we first met, she had 2 chihuahuas, I had 2 chihuahuas. I'd mentioned my back surgery, and she said to me, "Where did you have your back surgery?" I said, "Oh, the Nuffield Hospital in Newcastle." "Oh," she said, "I worked at the Nuffield Hospital in Newcastle. Who was your surgeon?" "Well, it wasn't David Stainsby, was it?" I said, "As a matter of fact, it was." And she said, "Oh, I was his chief theatre nurse." She said, "I probably assisted on your surgery." So there were so many things that happened that were just so weird. And I had a brother who had died, George, who was 7 years older than me, and who lived about 80 miles away from me, where I lived in Florida, which was... I didn't get a chance to meet George, but he was apparently a lovely guy, and I'd love to have met him. But so one day Helen said to me, she said, "I think we ought to do a DNA." So I said, "Okay." So we did this DNA test and it came back. But we bought a sibling test. So that is the point, a sibling test. So it came back, yes, we definitely were siblings. So we thought, we obviously had, but the man who she thought was her father was not now her father. He was her stepfather. Right. So we had the same father. Mm-hmm. And then we tried to find out who my father was. And through an aunt who just lied through her back teeth and wouldn't give us any information. And it was just like the Northeast Mafia, John. They didn't want to give any information away because they had so many secrets that they were just hiding.
Yeah, it's a generational thing, isn't it? I mean, that generation, that was how it was back then. Yeah, exactly.
It really was. It really was. And she eventually gave it in and to Helen and told Helen who our father was. And our mother had been with another chap who was a long-distance lorry driver. And every time he was away on his
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's like every cliche in the world's coming out here.
Every time he was away on his long-distance journeys, she continued having an affair with this other chap who was our father, Wilfred Harrison, who apparently was a very keen golfer, which is kind of weird. So we then found out that this was our father. So and then having got the DNA, but the DNA was so close, the numbers all came back and they had ticks in all these boxes, and it came back as 99.997% alike. Right. And there were a few other numbers after that, but it was basically 99.997.
Yeah.
And I thought one day, oh, gosh, this is really, really close, So I found up a very nice chap in a laboratory locally. And he said, this can't be right. He said, you got the wrong test. He said, you should have a twinship test instead of a sibling test. So I phoned up Helen. I said, what do you think? Should we do this? And she said, yeah, let's do it. So we did the twinship test and we came, absolutely, we were twins. Mm-hmm. Which was, and of course, Helen overnight, aged 16 months. But it turned out we had a little website, and this nurse contacted us. In those days, of course, there were no scans, so they used to just listen with those little sort of ear trumpet things, for the heartbeat.
Yeah.
And this lady suggested that Helen had been the weaker twin and not expected to live. And so that if in those days, in 1948, if a baby was not expected to live and the birth was not registered and the baby died, then you didn't have to pay for the funeral.
Right. Okay.
So that is why her birth was never registered. And then when it was registered were totally illegally registered on the wrong date. And she went through her life, poor Helen, being told that she was the tallest in the class, celebrating all those birthdays, on the wrong day. And it wasn't only the twinship test, but we found our mother's medical records of the old brown envelopes at the doctor's surgery. Do you remember those things?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we found our mother's medical records, which were just it was about a month before they were going to be destroyed, really. And there was no mention of a birth in 1950, but a mention of a birth in 1948, 2nd of December, 1948. And on the records, birth complicated, one baby feeding. And we learned from that one baby was feeding, one baby wasn't probably well enough to feed. And also we got the medical records from the unmarried mother's home where our mother had had put herself in to have the baby. She'd had 5 children, and this was the only pregnancy that she didn't stay at home for, knowing maybe that she was going to have twins, and that she was preparing for a double birth, which probably wasn't easy in those days. And this sickly baby, not expected to live, couldn't be adopted because it wasn't well enough. She wasn't well enough to be adopted. And my godmother, who was my mother's best friend, Connie, my mother, my adopted mother, rather, she just lived up the street. We lived on Elk Terrace Street, and my godmother was a health visitor, and she was there with my birth mother. She was her health visitor.
Wow.
So it was a bit of like an illicit trio. And she obviously, my adoptive mother had 2 very bad miscarriages, or a bad miscarriage, and couldn't have children. And this lady knew that she couldn't have any children and desperately wanted a child, my parents.
I mean, Jenny, I'm drained listening to this. I mean, what sort of emotions do you have now? I mean, it must be a real mixture of sadness, elation. I don't know. I'm not sure what adjectives to use, but how would you describe it? What do you feel when you think back on it all?
You know, at the time, it was like a real roller coaster of emotions, as you say. And when we decided to write the book, a lot came out that, you know, with Helen and I, because we had a ghostwriter, and she spent some time with us alone, with each of us, with some time with Helen, some time with me, and then some time together. And I had this, because Helen was kept by the family. She wasn't wanted. I
was just going to say that you got the best end of the deal, if you can put it that way. I mean, I've read enough of the book to. I mean, I won't go into details. Some of the things they're quite horrifying. The way she was treated.
Yeah, they were. It was quite obvious that the stepfather didn't want her. He would know that this child wasn't his child, and basically didn't want her there. Didn't want her living there, and she was abused mentally and emotionally, and even sort of physically at some point. She was thrown down the stairs and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's quite a tale you wouldn't believe until you read the book. And I felt, having read some of the stuff that Helen wrote, that I felt quite guilty because I'd had such a great life. With great parents who absolutely adored me and gave me such help and pushed me into everything that I wanted to do, even though that we didn't have a lot of money. I had riding lessons, I had swimming lessons, golf lessons, anything I wanted to do. They helped me and to do what I did. It was through this passion for sport that my dad had, passion for Newcastle United, which he handed on to me. And they were season ticket holders, my mum and dad, at Newcastle for many, many years. And my mother, it was through my dad that he took my mum to an exhibition match at Dunbar Golf Club where Henry Cotton was playing. And it was then that my mother got started with golf. So after my dad died, then she continued and had this passion that compelled this passion into me, that for sport in any way, shape or form. And she was fabulous. She helped me so much, and I'll be forever grateful to this woman who pushed me in any direction and guided me into being the golfer that I was.
How do you describe your relationship with your twin sister? I mean, it's evolved in a way that is maybe even unique. I'm not sure many people would have a similar story, but how do you describe it now?
I don't think there could be another story like ours.
No.
Yeah, she still lives. She moved back from Texas and lives with her husband, a Texan-born husband. They live up in the Northeast still, so we don't get to see each other a lot. We have. I just was on the phone to her yesterday, and we have the same aches and pains and the same the sort of crazy fingers and lumps and bumps on the same hands, and now we compare all our ailments.
Yeah.
And she wasn't really into sport as I've been, but that gets back to the nature or nurture thing in parenting. And obviously, I was guided by my dad and my mum. And she didn't have that in her life, and who knows, she might have been a great golfer had she had the same parents. And I've always sort of wondered if my mother must have known that I was one of a twin. She must have known, because she must have heard this from my godmother, who was the health visitor.
Yeah, the amount of information that was withheld throughout this process is just. You just shake your head. I mean, it could have been so much better, and your relationship would have been much longer. Knowing everything that went on, but people just didn't talk about it. Yeah, it's weird.
Well, we missed out on so much, John.
Yeah, exactly.
It's harsh, really, when you think about it. We missed out on so much of our lives together, and it's a shame, a great shame. And you say you want to catch up, but there's no way that you can catch up on all those years, because we didn't meet until we were 55. And it's strange to think that you didn't meet your twin sister until you were 55. But when we first met, and I was telling Helen about walking in and seeing Mercia that day, and I said and I had photos of the meeting, and she said, those are my jeans hanging over the radiator. She said, I was there then, and I could have walked in. And she said, even although that you were told not to say anything, she said, I would have known. I took one look at you, and I would have known that you were my mother's daughter, because you had the same. The likeness was just was crazy. Yeah. And I can remember walking out of that house, and it was so emotional. And I think I was still crying when I left. And my husband turned around to me and he said, well, now I know what you're going to look like when you're 82. He said, I think I'm leaving you now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's humor in everything, isn't there, somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah. You always manage to lighten the load.
Yeah. Just to finish up, I mean, just to justify the fact that this is supposed to be a golf podcast, but this has been certainly one of the most interesting ones I've done. I've done many of these things now, and this is it's a wonderful story in many ways, and at least it's got a happy ending, I think.
It has a very happy ending. Two people brought together, two lives broken apart, really. But coming together and meeting up and finding the similarities. She's mad on dogs. I'm mad on dogs. And the one picture that we have of our father, Wilfred, he's got a cocker spaniel with him next to him on a chair. And I've got two cocker spaniels. Who knows what he was like. But we know that he had this ongoing relationship with our mother, but after that ended, and he went on to marry, and he had 5 children, and two of whom are twins. So we had another set of twins.
Right. So
it's a strange story, but you've got to get on with life. It's a roller coaster. It's been a very emotional ride. But I think that I'm probably stronger because of it. I'm a stronger woman, stronger. I think you've got to be strong. to have done what I've done, being a trailblazer in the sport and gone out to the States. And I mean, before I went to America, I think I don't think I'd ever been abroad. And it was something that is going, I mean, my one holiday a year was going up to where our bungalow was for a couple of weeks in the summer. And the only day that we'd have out, we'd get the train up to Edinburgh, which was only sort of 80 miles up the road, and a day out to Edinburgh Zoo. I mean, that was it. And here I was going all over America playing golf. It was really crazy.
Yeah. Jenny, I'm not even going to try. You know what? I'm not even going to try to segue from what you've just told us all to getting back to talking about golf. But I thank you for your time. It's been a fascinating listen in many ways, not just for golfers, I hope. And I hope that you and your sister can find some peace with it. It can't be easy at times. I mean, as I say, you must be conflicting emotions through the whole thing. So.
It certainly is, and I think that we have found some peace. My children, my children are a blessing. I've got grandchildren now, and I have my dogs. Sadly, I lost my husband 3 years ago, which was a shock, but life goes on, and you learn to live and to get on with life. I hope that I've still got a lot of living to do, and thank you so much for having me on here talking to you all.
No,
and I really enjoyed it, John.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And Jenny Lee Smith, or Mrs. Lucas, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Wow, it's kind of hard to know what to say after that. What an incredible tale, and what a remarkable life in golf. I think Huggy put it nicely when he said at the end there, there's no way to segue from that life story back to golf, so let's not even try. We'll just leave it there. Big thanks, as always, to both Huggy and Jenny for giving so generously of their time. Now, I hope you've pressed the follow button so that you never miss an episode, including our next, with a woman who lost her sight late in life, but is now a world golf champion.
I like the challenge of choosing the appropriate club or what you think is and executing the shot. It feels so good when the 8-iron goes up in the air and lands on the green and you've got the right measurement and done it properly. I think there's such
what it's supposed to. It looks like a golf shot.
Yes, it's so rewarding.
That's Michelle Watts, one of Australia's most successful blind golfers, next time on The Thing About Golf.